Hello, everyone. Wanted to just say hi. I am Karen Carpenter, and I want to thank everybody for joining Audubon Dallas and the Trinity River Audubon Center for tonight's program on our favorite streaky little brown birds, the sparrows. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our Audubon members and our supporters, and to all our partners from the Fort Worth Audubon Society, the Texas Master Naturalists, and we even have a few people from the Texas Department of Transportation. Thanks to Lauren for passing this out to her bird curious colleagues and bird lovers. So after tonight's presentation, we're going to send out a recording to everyone who registered, along with some more information about how you can put into practice what you learn here on a couple of sparrow-focused bird walks that we're planning for December. We'll tell you about those in a bit. And some information to further your bird education with a discount code to the comprehensive sparrow class from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. By learning to identify sparrow species and document them on your eBird lists, you're participating in a citizen science project that contributes valuable information towards conservation efforts and helps Audubon towards our mission of protecting birds and their habitats today and tomorrow. Sparrows are some of my favorite birds in the world, both for their striking plumage variety and the identification challenge they present. Sparrows make a fun puzzle of putting together different field marks like plumage and body shape, behavior clues like habitat and their songs and calls. And we just get a quick view of them sometimes before they hop back into the bushes. So it makes it a really fun challenge. Learning sparrows is the perfect place to start leveling up your birding skills. I got obsessed with sparrows when I saw an eBird checklist with 9 different sparrow species, more than I had ever been able to identify. And I thought, well, I need to take a closer look at these birds and learn the identification marks so that I can identify them myself. I then attended a sparrow workshop at the Dallas Public Library with our speaker tonight, and here we are learning together. Our sparrow whisperer tonight is Jake Poinsett. He's the education manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center. In his role, he facilitates environmental education for all ages, also works with habitat management and restoration, volunteer coordination, and community engagement. Before joining Audubon 6 years ago, Jake was a park ranger for the Texas Parks and Wildlife, the South Carolina Park Service, and the National Park Service. And other than being a complete bird fanatic, which we all understand, he also loves all things reptile and amphibian. And he's an avid prairie advocate. And he tells me that when he's not immersed in nature, you can find him watching horror movies with his wife. And I know that the only thing that really scares Jake is the Jersey Devil, which we both heard stories about growing up because he's from the same small town as my mother, Mount Holly, New Jersey, home of the legend of the Jersey Devil. But now we're going to shift our focus to some less scary winged creatures, sparrows, and I'll turn it over to Jake to tell us more about them.
Thank you, Karen. That was awesome. You're the best. All right. So happy that everyone is spending their evening with us for the birds. I'm going to share my screen. Do we see a beautiful bird there? Awesome. All right. Yes. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jake Poinsett, the education manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center. And like Karen said, I love all things nature, specifically birds. And this time of year is really special because our sparrows are coming back. And that's where we're here tonight to geek out over sparrows, how to identify them, where to find them, and just fun facts and tips and tricks along the way. So we could jump right in, get started. Now, I'm sure this is not anyone's first Zoom program, but it's always good to go over the Zoom best practices. So we always recommend to please mute your microphone. You can feel free to ask questions by using the chat box. There will be time for Q&A at the end. We'll do our very best to answer any questions that you have. And also make sure your computer sound is up so you can hear me speaking about all these cool birds and fun facts. I'll do my best to speak clearly as I get very excited about these topics. And also make sure that your computer's video is on so you can see the beautiful photography on each slide. Many of them are from the Audubon Photography Awards, like this really cool picture here of a swamp sparrow hanging out on some switchgrass. So shout out to Caroline Sampson for this beautiful photo. So I mentioned that I work for the Trinity River Audubon Center, and we're part of the National Audubon Society, just like Audubon Dallas and many of the other chapters that are joining us tonight. At this point, the name Audubon is like synonymous with birds. But what is the story of Audubon? How did it come to be? Thanks to two women in conservation, Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway, they're sick and tired of high fashion of the late 1800s known as plume hats. People would shoot a bird, just like this great egret here, to put one feather in a cap. This became so popular with the high society types of the late 1800s that these birds almost went extinct. So Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway would organize gatherings to talk about alternatives. How can we appreciate these birds without making them go extinct? Eventually, more of these meetings started to pop up all around the Northeast, and collectively they got the Audubon Model Law passed in 1901, which banned all plume hunting. So every single time you see a great egret, it's a true conservation success story. And now Audubon is all over the place, and we're still leaders in conservation through advocacy, speaking up for the birds because they can't do it themselves, through environmental education, teaching people about their habitats that they need and the grand diversity of bird life all around the Americas, through habitat conservation, making sure these places are suitable for birds and other organisms that are associated with those habitats. And of course, through cutting edge science, making sure that we're doing our very best to learn what the birds need in the future as well. So that story I told you about Mina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway, that started in Massachusetts, and they named their organization the Audubon Society to pay homage to John James Audubon, who was an illustrator and naturalist who studied birds. But now it is all over the place. It's not just in Massachusetts, we're everywhere. And the work that we do in Audubon is divvied up via flyway, just like how birds migrate in their own specific flyways. So the needs of the Central Flyway can differ greatly that of the Pacific Flyway, Mississippi, or Atlantic Flyways. So we do what's best for birds in our areas and also along the migration paths because birds do not see borders. So a lot of the neotropical migrants that we're seeing in the spring and summer, they need to return back to their wintering grounds of Central and South America. So we need a hemispheric approach to make sure that every single stop along their journeys are cared for. And then Audubon in Texas, we also have a really grand history. All of the work in Audubon really began because of the Gulf Coast. So they're really important stopping points for migratory birds. As they land at places like High Island along the coast, they use those stopping points as like the Buc-ee's for birds. We all stop at Buc-ee's on a road trip, right? And once you stop at Buc-ee's, you got to refuel, take a break, take shelter, and then you disperse. You go on to the rest of your road trip. So after they stop at the places like that, they continue to traverse through Texas to all their preferred habitats, either staying there or moving onward towards Canada. But also there's lots of important colonial rookeries all throughout the coast that these places were protected. So by protecting these, it also helps with the ecosystem services that as people we depend on. So stopping storm surges, preventing lots and lots of damage. So we're protecting habitat for birds. Where birds thrive, people prosper. And now you can see Audubon is all over Texas, not just the coast. And all these different colors are your local Audubon chapters. Shout out to all of our friends in our chapters. In North Texas, we have Audubon Dallas, the Fort Worth Audubon Society, and the Prairies and Timbers Audubon Society. All these different chapters are really great to find fellow bird lovers, to go on fun bird walks, to work in different projects to make sure the habitat is suitable for birds. And also we have 3 different centers in our state, which is pretty awesome because there's only, I think, 43 nature centers in Audubon, and we get 3 of them. So in Dallas, we have the Trinity River Audubon Center. In Cedar Hill, we have the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center. And in San Antonio, there's the Mitchell Lake Audubon Center. And all 3 are like the greatest gateways to the outdoors. Different ways where you can build your own relationships with nature through guided programs, access to green spaces, and just taking a break, getting outside. All right, so this is what we're here for. Sparrows. Awesome. These American tree sparrows are also very excited, as you can tell. They're like, man, yes, they're going to be talking about us. All right, so what is a sparrow? What are these cool little birds? So they're passerines, or they're perching birds or songbirds. And we actually have 2 different groups of sparrows you would find, or 2 different families of sparrows you would find in North America. There's the old world sparrow, like the house sparrow, and the family Passeridae. And those were actually brought over in the mid-1800s because of moth larvae that were attacking, quote unquote, attacking trees. So people brought over house sparrows to try to combat that. But in turn, they took off. And now the house sparrow is all over the place, all over the world, probably the most successful bird. But because of this as well, they started to outcompete lots of other species by taking over nesting habitat, outcompeting other species in certain areas. So those are the old world sparrows that we find in our area. The New World sparrows, the ones that have evolved to occupy the different habitats here in North America, Central America, and South America, is in the family Passerellidae. In North America, we have 43 different species, and in Texas, there's 38. So again, the diversity here is grand. Originally, They were embricids, but then thanks to some genetic testing, we realized that it's a whole different family. So now they have their own family, Passerellidae. They're found in a variety of habitats all over the place. Some are breeding in the Arctic tundra, some in forests, some in grasslands, some in sagebrush. So they have a really broad spectrum of the different habitats they depend on. And what's cool about it is that no matter what their habitat is, that camouflage is perfect. They have the perfect camouflage to hide in their specific habitats they've evolved to be a part of. But altogether, people call these birds the LBJs, the little brown jobs, the little brown birds, because they can be a real thorn in some birders' sides. But the more you practice, the more you learn about the tips and tricks, and the more often you go look for sparrows, it's actually kind of easy to identify them, the deeper you dive. But altogether, they're primarily brown and grayish in color. There's always that color pattern involved. They have distinct head markings and patterns that we can use to identify them. They have conical bills. That's important because of their diets. They're not like a super hard conical bill like a cardinal where it's only eating seeds and grains. It's because a lot of them, their diets change seasonally. In their breeding territories, they could be eating lots of insects, but when they return to their wintering grounds, if it's a migratory species, a lot of them shift their diets to seeds, grains, and berries. So it's the perfect Swiss Army knife beak that the sparrows have. But when and where are you going to find these cool birds in your part of Texas? No matter where you are in Texas, you're going to see sparrows. Some are year-round residents, like where we are in North Texas, you can find lark sparrows year-round. Certain parts of North Texas, you can find chipping sparrows and field sparrows year-round. But also you'll find different species just during migration. It's a spectacle to see the clay-colored sparrows migrating through during migration on their way to the breeding and wintering grounds. We also have some sparrows that are just found here in the summertime when they're breeding. Ones like the grasshopper sparrow, they breed all throughout the Blackland Prairie in areas that are still managed properly for them. Unfortunately, losing habitat, and they're a species of greatest conservation need, but they've evolved to rely on the habitats of the Blackland Prairie. We'll also see them migrating, passing through and wintering not too far from here, but they are a summer breeder in our area. But then in the wintertime, this is sparrow season. Nearly half of all the sparrow species found in Texas are winter residents. So again, we have 38, and over half are the ones that are found here in the wintertime. It's because a lot of them are breeding in Canada, and they're returning to the southern parts of the US to spend their winters. A lot of them will change their habitats as they come down. Some of them will occupy similar looking habitats. So a lot of them are found here in the winter. And granted, Texas is huge, so it's kind of a cheat code. We have such grand diversity of habitats here, so of course we have so many sparrows. But many of these birds are grassland dependent, like we mentioned our grasshopper sparrow. And because of that, their populations are dwindling, they're plummeting. So it's up to us as habitat managers, stewards, conservationists, and just overall bird lovers to do what we can to preserve what's left so these birds can be around for next generations. All right, you found yourself a sparrow. We're pumped, we're excited, but you're like, man, what am I even looking at? What is this thing? So just like with all other birds, you can identify them with general impression, shape, and size, with your field guides, with other friends around you, taking pictures and putting them online. But also you can dive a little deeper by understanding different things about the sparrow. Their habitat. So some are grassland dependent, some are found in forests, some in backyards, more urban settings. And then you can even more specific to their habitat needs within that specific habitat. So back to our friend, the grasshopper sparrow, in their breeding habitat, they've been studied to breed in areas of a wide range of 12% to 90% grass cover within their grassland, but they prefer 50 to 70% grass cover for their breeding habitat. So if we find a spot where it's really dense with perennial bunch grasses, with a couple spots mixed in between of bare ground and forbs, that's perfect habitat for the breeding bird of the grasshopper sparrow. And then other specialists like the Bachman sparrow, they're found in places in the piney woods of like longleaf pine savanna. So they are very specific to that understory of large tall grasses with the huge pine trees of the longleaf pine scattered about. Similar habitat you would find the brown-headed nuthatch. So there's very specific niches that some of these sparrows have. Also, time of year. You can narrow down those usual suspects by knowing if it's just during migration, if they're in large groups passing through, or if it is wintertime and all of your friends are back hanging out in your backyard. So knowing the time of year and understanding the seasonality of these species can also be very helpful. And of course, their behavior. Some are more solitary. So some of the birds we're going to mention in the group, when you spot them, they're probably by themselves. They might be even more solitary during the breeding season. Like they're really going to claim a large patch of territory. Like a male grasshopper sparrow does not want to be around other male grasshopper sparrows. He's calling to say, get out of here. But then some are more gregarious. Like we'll have mixed flocks of other species all feeding together on the forest floor. And of course, their calls and songs through monics. With mnemonics, you can identify a lot of different birds. There's some really famous ones like the Carolina wren, the tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea, the barred owls, who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. And same thing with sparrows. We'll go over some of the mnemonics of individual species when we get to each one. But in the wintertime, not all of them are calling the same way they would with their songs of the breeding season. Some still sing those songs throughout the year. That could be because they're practicing. Breeding season's only 6 months away. I got to do my very best. Some it's because they're still using it as a call and response. That's what a lot of those chips and chirps are for, saying, hey, I found food nearby. There's food availability. Is anyone else in my flock nearby? Also calls for safety, calls for alarm calls. So there's lots of different reasons for chips and chirps and calls. And of course, they're field marks. Once you have your binoculars set onto your sparrow, here is a zoomed in example of a sparrowhead topography. So some of these terms are really important to know moving forward when you're trying to go back to your field guide of what would it look like in this color here in this part of its head. Some things we'll point out tonight are the malar stripe, that black line that's starting from like the very bottom edge of their beak going towards the shoulder, the submustachial stripe and the mustachial stripe. So the submustachial stripe in our lark sparrow here is white, and then right above it, that mustache line is black. The only reason I grew a mustache is because I love sparrows so much. Just kidding, we're having fun. And then the nape towards the back of the head, some have little marks back there. Their supercilium, like that eyebrow stripe on this lark sparrow, it's white going all the way back towards the nape. And then our lateral crown stripe is another one we'll be using. So there could be two different lateral crown stripes going down the sides there. Some birds, there's really noticeable superlaurels and lores too, like different yellow colorations right there. So we'll be using these terms throughout the presentation, but this is a really good guide of how detailed the facial markings can be on sparrows. So again, it's not just a drab, plain little bird. Once you get a closer look, they're so detailed and beautiful. All right. Our North Texas winter residents. A couple honorable mentions that won't be on the PowerPoint tonight. They are Passerellidae as well, but they don't have sparrow in the common name, but they are sparrows. Our dark-eyed juncos, our eastern towhee, and our spotted towhee, they're also found in our area in the wintertime, but they don't have that typical little brown bird look. Dark-eyed junco, a little similar, but they're more like a grayish black. So they're not in the presentation, but they're also lumped into this group. Our Savannah sparrow. So this one's medium-sized compared to the others in the group. It has a small bill, kind of like sharp towards the end compared to some of the others we're going to find. Has really brown, streaky backside, and also on its buffy chest, lots of brown streaks up top. Sometimes you'll see there's a little bit of a central spot, but that's not something to just identify it with because there's other birds with that central spot that we'll talk about as well. They have some white undersides with the bright and brown streaks, but those yellow superlaurel patches, those yellow eyebrows, are a really good way to identify. Sometimes it's really hard to tell in the wintertime, but they're still there. But if you don't see it, you'll notice some of the other birds on the list that do have a similar striking pattern with a white belly. They'll have other features on their facial markings that are very, very vibrant compared to the Savannah sparrow. So the big giveaways are those yellows and the black and white, brown and white stripings. So it's found in open grasslands and agricultural fields. Very different. Some of the birds that we're going to mention, and also like our grasshopper sparrow before, they are not picky on what type of plants are out there. It can be a fallow field full of Johnson grass. This sparrow doesn't care. It's going to eat there. It's going to hang out. It's going to take cover. They like things really thick, tall, and overgrown. They have a really high-pitched insect-like call and little chirps and chips. It's called a Savannah sparrow because of the scientist who described it. It was captured in Savannah, Georgia, even though it does like grassland habitats like savannas, but that's not why it's called the Savannah sparrow. And then on to our friend, the Vesper sparrow. This one's so beautiful. My heart always skips a beat whenever I get to see one. Around the same size as the Savannah sparrow, but a little bit larger. And it has brown and gray streaks, but a little darker on its belly compared to the Savannah sparrow. It has a white eye ring and then has white outer tail feathers, kind of like how mockingbirds and blue-gray gnatcatchers have as well. They have those white outer tail feathers. So if you see it in flight, which sometimes can be difficult because these sparrows love to walk on the ground or jump down to cover to get away from you. But if you see it in flight, and also when it's perched on like a wire or a branch, it has those white outer tail feathers. It has a pale submustachial stripe going down towards the auricular on the side there around its cheek. It also has chestnut patches on their shoulders. But these are all little things that if you can get a good look at it for more than 5 seconds and you put all these together, you find yourself the Vesper sparrow. But again, just like a lot of these other grassland birds, you get it just a little bit to get a good ID and they jump back down. But they're also found in grasslands and agricultural fields. Since a lot of them breed in more western portions of the Great Plains, they prefer shorter grass prairies in their wintering grounds as well. So if you find areas with large stands of Side Oats grama or a place that was recently mowed that's coming up a little bit faster, those transitional zones of taller grass to shorter grass, that's a more likely spot to find your Vesper sparrow. Called the Vesper sparrow because of its songs going into the twilight, just singing all night long in its breeding season. And we have our Lincoln sparrow. This one is very plentiful in our area in the wintertime. Also medium-sized sparrow, but it's overall rusty brown, has a gray appearance towards its head and the top of its back, but has a really buffy cream colored chest. So that buffy cream is my immediate giveaway, like, oh, we got a Lincoln sparrow there. Also has the tan cream colored submustachio stripe with a sometimes grayish, brownish auriculars on their side, as well as their supercilium. Their cap kind of looks pointed with rusty browns and grays, and they prefer like a transitional scrubby habitat. Could be on the edges of forests and grasslands, or if it's a place that's covered in vines, lots of hiding spots where they like to skulk and move around. In the breeding habitat, they prefer wet meadows, but down here in their wintering habitat, lots of different scrubby areas, lots of options of that in North Texas. Unfortunately, not so fun fact about this bird. This is one of the most common species that we find during the lights out walks, during migration. So the collision surveys that we do downtown, this bird is subjected to collide into buildings more than other species. We know that for some species, ones like the woodcock, when they do migrate in the fall going south, they're going much faster than they are during the spring because they're making their slow migration during the spring, starting in February, really. They're breeding along the way, they're taking their time, or they're going much faster in the fall, subjected to window collisions. Lincoln sparrow, they're still trying to figure out the data. Why exactly is this one so subjected to window collisions compared to others? Same thing with warblers. So the theories now is that because a lot of them are forest breeders, they're good at maneuvering through to find insects. They're going so fast that sometimes they'll collide into buildings as well. But this sparrow is a subject for those. So quick shout out to the Lights Out program. We can all provide safe passage to our feathered friends by turning our lights out at night during peak migration or during migration in general from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. since these birds have evolved to migrate at night, following the stars as their guide. Also, with their electromagnetic receptors, understanding the pull of north and south. But those bright lights disorient and confuse them, and we can all help out by turning our lights out at night. All right, then moving on to our friend, the swamp sparrow. This one's really cool, really unique. It has longer legs than other sparrows. It acts like a little miniature wading bird in its preferred swampy wetland habitats, moving around, picking up any seeds that may have fallen, any macroinvertebrates moving around through the edges of wetlands and shallow water. They have a much more compact body with a long tail compared to the others on the list so far, and much darker overall in appearance on its back, and on its has like those brownish red auricular stripes with the submustachio cream color, but little to no markings on its belly. So oftentimes people will say, is it a Lincoln's or is it a swamp? Because some of the colors might look similar, but if we go back to the Lincolns, they had that buffy cream color with all the stripes on it. The swamp, it does not have that. And also its preferred habitats. Lincoln sparrows will be found in more wetland areas in the breeding season, love scrubby habitat in the winter. Swamp sparrow, you're going to find them along the wetland edges in big pedestals of switchgrass or cordgrass through other graminoids that are along that pond edge. So that's their preferred habitat. Then we have our song sparrow. Song sparrows are really bulky, bigger sparrows with a long tail. They have a variable color depending on their location. So the more western can be red, the more eastern can be brown. And they have this brown eyeline strip that extends all the way back towards their nape. They have this white tress with all the streaking on it, similar to the others, also with that central spot. The central spot's much more vibrant on these guys compared to the ones we've seen so far. But that white mustachial stripe and the line going towards the back of their nape, those are other dead giveaways you found a song sparrow. It's also known for its melodic tune, hence the name. There's mnemonics for this one too. Like the three pitches in the beginning, real short, like made, and then has a long extended trill at the end of tea kettle, 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 kettle. And this is just a reference point because also how their variation on color depending on their location, also variation to their song. They practice their song all the time, so you will hear these occasionally sing in the winter, but each individual has different tunes and pitches, and they're like the jazz musicians of Sparrow World. They're just all over the place. It's also a habitat generalist. It can be found in open forests, grasslands, urban settings, park settings. It can be found mixed in with Lincoln sparrows and swamp sparrows on the transitional zones of wetlands and scrubby habitat. So it's just found in all different places. No matter where you are in the lower 48, at some point in time, a song sparrow is somewhere nearby. So they're just all over North America. Now it's somewhat doppelganger is our fox sparrow, also a large sparrow, both a round body, has the black and yellow bills you see in the picture here. There's less color patterns on the face compared to song sparrows, even more with some other individuals. Some other individuals are much darker red with little to no patterns on their face and head. But this one, you see the big red cheeks. But what really stands out to me is how beautiful the markings are on its belly. And look, it's like an airbrush stroke someone painted on the fox sparrow. It's really, really pretty. Deep red in some individuals, but they're found in forested habitats on the edges of forests and grasslands. And like the others on the list, they love to forage in the ground for food, sometimes in mixed flocks of other sparrows. There's a really cool video online of them using their hind claws, just like other sparrows do, kicking back some of the leaf litter, looking for any potential insects or seeds that have dropped. And its body is like chaotically moving at all times, but its head is just so fixated, not moving at all, in one still position, looking where the food is. So they use those hind claws to kick back any of the leaf litter on the bottom, looking for any potential food on the floor. So sometimes if you're walking on a forested trail, it might sound like there's a humongous animal in there. It could just be a fox sparrow kicking around some leaves. So this one's a special treat for our area. This is the Harris's sparrow. This is the largest sparrow, and it has a very, very long tail. It has a distinct black cap and throat, even more so with older, mature individuals. Juveniles are real patchy, and sometimes you barely see any of the black at all on their throat or their head. But this is the only endemic breeding songbird to Canada. So every single Harris's sparrow was born in the Arctic tundra, and they only winter towards the southern Great Plains. So their preferred habitat is those early successional habitats, those transitional zones of grasslands and forested edges, oftentimes somewhere near water sources like creek beds or seasonal ponds. And they have that thick pink chunky bill, much larger of a chunky bill, or much larger of a pink bill than the other pink bill on the list later on. And just overall much larger bird. There was an ornithologist that was studying their pecking order, if you will. So they're feeding together in flocks of other Harris's sparrows, and the juveniles pretty much give right of way to the more older individuals for the preferred feed options. So ornithologist captured one, added some black to him on his head and his neck, released him back to the ground, and the juveniles kind of stepped aside and like, all right, go ahead, you get first dibs. So they respect of their elders, which is pretty cool. But this bird is also really unique because of its food preferences. I know there's a lot of people that ragweed is not your favorite plant. I get it. If you have seasonal allergies, it could be your enemy. But by studying the contents of their stomach in its wintering habitat, ornithologists have figured out that the Harris's sparrow diet is mostly made up of seeds from ragweed. So western ragweed, giant ragweed. So therefore, if the Harris's sparrow needs the ragweed, then I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And even more so because this is a species of greatest conservation need, like many others that we've mentioned before. From the 2005 State of the Birds report, a lot of these birds are not doing very well, including the Harris's sparrow, from loss of habitat, from issues of its patterns during migration, from climate change. So having a little bit of ragweed here and there for the Harris's sparrow, I think that'll be all right. Now here's a famous one. Everyone knows this guy, our white-throated sparrow. Also a very large sparrow with a chunky body and long tail, but has that distinctive, really bright white throat with the large yellow superlaurels and the white stripes going all the way back towards the nape. This one's also going to forage on the floor with mixed flocks of other sparrows. And to me, I know like winter is really, really here when I just hear the constant chorus of the white-throated sparrow when they first come down. So large populations breed in the forests of Canada, the eastern deciduous forests of Canada. So when they come down here, we hear their call where they're constantly bragging about how cool Canada is. They're just saying, "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." Some people say it sounds like old Tim Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. So once you hear that, you know winter has set in and the sparrows have returned. Then we have our friend, the white crowned sparrow. This one's large like the others on the list, but he's a little slender compared to some of the others and a long tail as well. The cap at certain points kind of looks like it's peaked towards the end, but it's smooth and flat going down towards the bill. Adults have the white and black stripes on the crown, when juveniles will have brown and gray stripes on the crown, but there's still the same pattern and little to no markings on their belly, as well as the rest of their face. So those are good ID tricks for this one here. If you do see a juvenile, which can be a little tricky compared to some of the other sparrows. Also found foraging on the ground near the forested edges and open woodlands. Good spot to see them at the Trinity River Audubon Center is on the edge of our Overlook Trail, where it transitions from the big, what we call post oak hill, where it's like an oak mott of post oaks, willow oaks, chinkapin oaks, and then going down the hill, there's a big open grassland area, higher percentage of forbs and grasses, but we're introducing much more. But that's where they love to go back and forth. So whenever you're birding a track, go up to that hill and you'll see some jumping around. And this adorable little sparrow, our field sparrow. So this is one that does have breeding populations throughout Texas and including North Texas, but it's a small, slender sparrow, and our population booms in the wintertime from the more northern individuals that are wintering down here. It has that gray face and chest. You don't really see the chest on this picture here, but little to no barring on it. It's the gray, really, really dark gray or deep gray on their chest and on their face. They have the circles on their cheeks as well with the white eye rings. It's found in these grassland habitats, but also on forested edges and brushlands. Also will feed in mixed flocks in the wintertime, and it can also visit your backyard bird feeder. We'll talk more about introducing bird feeders in your backyard to entice sparrows to hang out for the winter, but this is one that would visit. Also has that beautiful pink bill, but again, it's much smaller in size than the Harris's sparrow, so because of that relative, much smaller bill. Then our chipping sparrow, slender compared to some of the others on the list. Cap is a rusty brown in the wintertime as opposed to the more vibrant color in the summer, like a deeper red. So this is a picture of an individual in its wintering range. Also breeds in certain parts of Texas as well, areas of North Texas, but population booms in the winter. It has the black eye stripe going all the way back towards the nape. And there's a clear underside with no barrings or spots as well. It can be found foraging on the ground, similar habitat, those transitional zones of grasslands and forests, and it's another backyard bird feeder bird. So this one will visit your bird feeder and it's not picky at all. It'll gobble up any seeds. Recently on a bird walk at the Audubon Center, it was like a fun master class of plants for birds. I was mentioning how switchgrass is such a powerhouse plant in the Blackland Prairie for preventing erosion, for forming the pond's edges, for ecosystem services, and also tons of habitat for birds, for the ground nesters, as well as the seeds for the winter residents. And as I'm pointing out switchgrass, the chipping sparrow jumped up, was obviously light enough to stand on the stem, but not topple over the switchgrass, gobbled up some seeds and flew away. And I was like, thank you, chipping sparrow, for that little lesson. That was awesome. So super cool bird. This one was also striking. I mean, they're all strikingly beautiful, but this is very, very vibrant and bright to me. This is our lark sparrow, another one that breeds in North Texas, but populations will boom in winter. It's a large, very large compared to some of the others, light colored sparrow. Really, really light chest, but it has that central spot. But the big giveaways are the chestnut colored auriculars, and then they'll have the crown stripes up top as well. Has a dark black mallard stripe that goes down towards, and then the white submustachial stripe on top. Also prefers large open grasslands, but will winter in areas that's a good mixture of woody species and more graminoids, more grasses, sedges, and rushes. So in its breeding habitat, it prefers large open spaces, but it can kind of transition to different habitat in the wintertime. A really reliable spot to find them in the winter is Gus Engling Wildlife Management Area. Whenever I'm out there, I'm probably going to find a whole bunch of lark sparrow. So it's a good spot for them. I feel like I've said this already, but this is probably also one of my favorite sparrows, if not my favorite sparrow. This is our LeConte sparrow. It's one of the smallest in North America. It's notorious for being really secretive, and some of the other grassland birds on the list prefers to spend most of its time on the ground or hunker down in between the perennial bunch grasses where it feels more safe and secure because of its perfect camouflage. And it's so secretive that I think after it was first identified and described by Leconte, they didn't find a nest for 100 or so years later. We're in its preferred breeding habitats of places like the Dakotas and Minnesota, in those prairie areas with some of the wet transitional zones. But a good way to identify it by its markings, it has that beautiful orange throat that starts to go down towards its chest where it slowly turns into white. And it has those streaks going from their superlaurels all the way back towards their nape. That is also beautiful orangish yellow, those big yellow, gray patches on their cheeks, and it's an auburn and brown striking on their backside. Really beautiful. It's in our area, but much more uncommon than some of the others because of their habitat types. They'll stop by during migration into any type of open grassland where they can gobble up some seeds to continue to fatten up as they continue to go more south. But they prefer areas that are dominated by little bluestem in their wintering grounds. So that's one of their preferred food preferences in their wintering areas. So again, like many others on the list, they transition their diet. They'll still eat insects if it's available, but they're looking for areas of heavy, dense stands of little bluestem. Well, awesome. That's a good chunk of the sparrows that we'll find here. And again, we mentioned the honorable mentions in the beginning, the juncos or the junco and the towhees. But that's a good, healthy list of some of the great sparrow diversity we get here in the wintertime. But now you're asking yourselves, where can I go find them? Where can I go look for them? Put these ID tips and tricks to the test. You can always set up some backyard bird feeders. Flat tray or flatter tray feeders are really great because it's adding options for birds that prefer to be on the feeder, and then lots of those sparrows that love to forage in the ground, using those hind claws to kick things around. So it's adding levels of habitat. So lots of things that need that specific types of structure, like we talked about before. Same thing when they're feeding. So some birds want to feed up high, some prefer to be down low. There's lots of different seed options you could use, since these are mostly granivorous in the wintertime. But I always recommend, like, bird feeder is great, but I always recommend trying to create a sparrow-friendly yard or sparrow-friendly habitat. Like all other living, all other living things, they need food, water, shelter, and space. Since a lot of these are grassland dependent, and they prefer that habitat structure of things that are short, tall to brushy, having some species like this introduced is a great start. Big bluestem and little bluestem. Since these are warm season perennial bunch grasses, they produce seed in the fall and winter, and that coincides in the time when the sparrows return. So that's when they have available food options for them. And then in turn, because you're having these native plants, they are larval hosts for lots of insects. Skipper butterflies rely on the perennial bunch grasses of our prairie, and all of the insectivores will also be attracted to it because it is attracting the insects. So overall, you're doing more than just for the sparrows. You're doing more for diversity in general. And yes, of course, ragweed. That's another good option. So forbs produce lots of different seeds that are important for birds. Good example is our American goldfinch. They love to gobble up seeds from forbs. Forbs are just a variety of different types of wildflowers. And birds like the clay-colored sparrow, when we were talking about earlier, some species like the grasshopper sparrow prefer higher percentages of grasses. The clay-colored sparrow prefers higher percentage of forbs. So different habitats for different birds, different needs, different preferences. So you have lots of different wildflowers out there in your backyards or on your property. It can entice other birds to stop in too. And then a bunch of asterisks next to the Texas cupgrass, because it is a grass that produces seeds that sparrows will love if the seeds are still around, because it's also a fan favorite for the painted bunting. So painted buntings are another star of North Texas. And if you want to entice them to try and visit your backyard, you can have bird feeders, but having those native habitats and the native grasses they've evolved to rely on, like Texas cupgrass, is a great way to introduce them to your yards. And of course, always recommend to incorporate a brush pile. A lot of these birds need their hiding spots. There's lots of predators out there that would want to eat a sparrow, including other birds, lots of different species of hawks, or perhaps a snake. So by having this, incorporating a brush pile in your backyard, there's great places for hiding spots. There's also going to be food options that are there for them. So creating those different levels of habitat and adding structure will do a lot. All right, now you're amped. Now you're ready to go birding for some sparrows. There's tons of different places to go. This is just a small list of my favorite places to bird. we have our Cedar Hill State Park, and then right down there, we also have Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center. Both places are really phenomenal. And then, of course, shout out to Cedar Ridge Preserve. That whole green belt of Cedar Hill has a lot of great birding spaces. I live in Ellis County, and if anyone else frequents Ellis County, my favorite place to go birding out there, my local patch, is called the Buffalo Creek Wetlands. It's just south of Bardwell Lake, and it's a great option. And you're normally the only person there, which is kind of nice. You get to go and just have the whole place to yourself. But lots of different sparrows occupy that in the wintertime. I mentioned Gus Engling. That's just out in between Corsicana and Fairfield. It's a wildlife management area, so you'd have to get your limited use pass, but it's good for, I think, a year from March to March, or I think, but don't quote me on that one. And then Hagerman National Wildlife Refuge, extremely biodiverse as well. The LBJ National Grasslands not too far from here. It's worth the trip. But then special shout out to the Trinity River Audubon Center, because we will be doing a sparrow walk on Saturday, December 13th at 9 a.m. You can register online on our website. And then an awesome shout out to my good friend Reba Collins, who will also be leading a bird walk focusing on sparrows. She's an absolute pro, and she's doing it on Sunday, December 14th at 8 a.m. You can sign up for that one via Audubon Dallas, and Karen mentioned that the signups will be on their calendar starting tomorrow. So 2 really awesome sparrow-specific walks coming up in December. We can put all these tips and tricks to the test. And then outside this, they're going to be here for a long time. They're going to be here for the rest of winter and leaving in the spring. We can all spare some time for the sparrows. And we can do that by becoming a community scientist if you're not already. By using eBird, you're contributing your really important data to overall bird populations for helping habitat managers, ornithologists, bird enthusiasts to understand populations and trends and what we need to do for birds and the things that they need. Another thing you can do is a Project Feeder Watch. If you're more of a casual bird watcher and you got some bird feeders up, you can join the Project Feeder Watch team. That's also really valuable data for urban areas. And then the big one coming up is the Christmas bird count. This is the largest and longest community science project that is specific to birds. And it is an Audubon project that started in the early 1900s, first by Frank Chapman. It was an alternative to the Christmas side hunt where people would go out and shoot as many birds as they could. And then Frank said, how about we just look at them instead and just say how many we saw? And then it became super popular. And now it is a really important, critical piece of data for us to better understand the wintering habitats of birds, their populations and trends. And we have multiple counts that occur in the Dallas area, but 2 I'd like to shout out tonight. The TXTA count, which is on Saturday, December 27th. That includes the property of the Trinity River Audubon Center and John Bunker Sands Wetland Center and all the land in between. We have the highest amount of birds we've had for that one was 88, and I would love to get over 100 this year. That would be awesome. So please reach out to me. There's my email. And then another huge shout out to Karen Carpenter, who's helping lead the TXDA count, which is Saturday, December 20th. And that one's occurring more in Dallas. And if you want to sign up and join for that one or learn more, you can email programs@audubondallas.org. And then once the Christmas bird count is gone, we have the Great Backyard Bird Count in February. And that's a jam-packed weekend of people just trying to count as many birds as they can. Just a quick instantaneous snapshot of bird populations in the wintertime. Last year, it happened to coincide with Valentine's Day. So we did something with Blaine called the Timberdoodle Canoodle, where we went out and looked for the woodcocks because that's when they're around. So if it doesn't fall on Valentine's Day this year, we'll still do the Timberdoodle Canoodle, and whatever we see will be contributed to the Great Backyard Bird Count. And then outside of looking for birds and contributing to science, we ask you all just to volunteer, either at your local Audubon Center or your favorite green space. Spring Creek Prairie Preserve, Dogwood Canyon, Trinity River Audubon Center. We're always looking for volunteers to help with the habitat restoration, become bird guides, and just learn what we can do for our feathered friends. And then this picture here is of a Harris sparrow caught by Blaine Carnes at our the Mosey Station. So it's a winter banding protocol where we're trying to better understand the bird populations in the wintertime on our property, as well as a study that's being conducted with John Bunker Sands Wetland Center. He's going to start banding in November. So if anyone's interested to observe and learn and watch, it's super fascinating. We love inviting people out to take a look, and just shoot me an email and I can send you some of the dates. If you'd like to continue learning about sparrows, if this did not scratch your sparrow fix enough, then there's lots of things you can do, including the sparrow identification course offered by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. If you sign up now, you can have this code to get 30% off. And even after 11/18, you can still get the sale price of 30% off. This code does expire July 2026. So if anyone's interested, screenshot this, take a picture, sign up. It's a really awesome course that's really, really detailed. It goes into their habitat, biology, ecology, more field tips and tricks. And it's not just sparrows of Texas, it's sparrows all over the place. So it's really detailed. Here's another cool fox sparrow that's much darker than the ones that we saw earlier. All right, here's a fun little game. The last 3 slides, we're going to put our knowledge to the test of what we just learned. Does anyone know what this sparrow is? And if you have an answer, throw it in the chat. And then I don't see the chat, so Karen, if you want to let everyone know or announce afterwards, whoever got them right.
I do not see anybody guessing. So come on, who knows what this sparrow is?
Chipping.
Yeah, it's Sparrow though. That's pretty good.
Okay, we have some guesses. Chipping, song, field, chipping, chipping.
Oh, could be field.
We also have a guess of a chipping or a juvenile white-crowned. A white-crowned, juvenile white-crowned vesper. Vesper had that really bold eye ring, and I don't see that here. White-crowned field. The pink bill does look a little bit like a field. Some
This is a
good,
tough one.
good guesses in here. It's a little bit of a trick.
I'm gonna say white crowned.
Yeah, it's a juvenile white crown. So whoever said white crown, great job. So it still has those strikes there on the top of its crown, little to no markings on its belly. That was a tough one. And then the other we have, who's this guy? So this one looks very different than its adult, the one we were looking on the slides earlier. It has these streaks, but there's also some markings that are going from his eye, going back towards his nape, and you can kind of see different coloration towards the top of his head.
Yeah, there's a single clue on this sparrow that trumps all the other field marks. We have some guesses. Lincoln. Oh no, that was a song. Song, fox. It does kind of have some really interesting pattern like a fox. Oh, and here we have Savannah. Savannah. It's very streaky, like a little
I
savannah.
can see that, yeah. Yeah, bird 2 is a juvenile chipping sparrow. So a few people got that one too. Awesome.
And it's that eye line through
Yep.
the eye all the way to the bill is a chipping sparrow trait.
So when they're juveniles, they have all those marks on their belly too, but it eventually goes away with their adult plumage. But yeah, like Karen said, that eye line going all the way through towards the back. All right, last one. All right, this one was a joke. LeConte, exactly. Yeah, there's LeContes in there, I bet. So there's no sparrow in this picture, but I bet there's sparrows in this picture. So again, when you're birding in grasslands, you get sometimes just a second to see them, to make a quick look and then kind of wait around for them to pop up again. They're watching you before you can see them. But yeah, so birding in prairies can be a challenge, but it's so much fun. And like I said, I bet in this picture, there's tons of sparrows that are moving around watching you. But thank you, everybody. I hope everyone had a great time and you enjoyed the presentation. And now you're energized and amped and inspired to go look for some sparrows.